You're listening to the Build a Better Business series from the More Than More podcast. We're here to share the essential tips, tricks, tools, and strategies you need to build a more sustainable, profitable, and enjoyable business. Let's get started. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited for my special guest today. I'm getting to sit down with people that aren't necessarily within our walls, not our agents, not other staff members. So I'm super excited to get to talk with our two guests today. So I'm just going to kind of point and you guys go to introduce yourselves, who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing what you do. So go ahead.
Thanks, Angela. I'm Mike Swaim. I have a residential appraisal company in West Des Moines with my two brothers, Chris and Dan Swaim. And I've been in the business for 31 years. That seems hard to believe. We cover about 5 or 6 counties. So we've got obviously Polk, Dallas, Madison, Warren. We'll go to Guthrie and do Lake Panorama.
Okay.
And we're strictly residential, although we do 1 to 4 families. So fourplexes, duplexes. We'll do acreage properties that are non-tillable ground.
Okay.
And then, primarily most of our customers are banks and mortgage companies, but I do a lot of divorce appraisals, estate appraisals, and then private appraisals for agents who may have a difficult property that they're struggling with their seller, and so they'll hire
I may
us
or
as
may
well.
not send people your way sometimes to ask you questions. So just for some more context too, I was kind of telling Jen context for Mike. So Mike does some teaching with IAR, so about appraisals as well in the broker classes.
Yeah, so both my dad and I team teach, although the last 2 times I've done it just on my own, but I do teach for the Iowa Association of Realtors. Mm-hmm. So I teach a pre-broker class on market analysis and appraisal theory.
I took it.
So it's been great. We've got another one coming up in December. So if anyone is out there and wanting to know a little bit about paired sale analysis and how to get better at market analysis, I do that. And then for the past probably 10 years, I've been going around to various real estate offices here in the central Iowa area, speaking with agents and just sort of putting myself out there to say, listen, anything you want to ask an appraiser, here it is.
Yeah.
So it's been great.
Yeah, so I'm super excited. We've had you here for classes before. It's been a little while. And he is our gift. He gives us his contributory value guide that we kind of update in our drive. So all of those resources come from Mike, and I would say he's got really good experience. So I'm excited to pick your brain today.
Yeah, you bet.
So Jen has been sitting here quietly. Sorry that
You're okay. Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah. Thanks for
Jen,
having me.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for coming. Going to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Perfect. I'm Jenn Oliver, and I'm a mortgage lender at New American Funding. Been there just over a year now, and been in lending 20 years in some capacity. Yeah. And just strictly mortgage residential lending for the last, I think, going on 12 years now.
Okay. And so Jen too has been so gracious with her time. And you've come to train our new agents kind of regularly on IFA. You did a class with us when we did a whole overview of IFA and FHA, VA, all those kinds of things. You kind of help come talk about that too. So again, thanks for being an educator and being willing to.
You're welcome.
Being willing to talk to our people. So I wanted to bring in 2 experts in the appraisal world. So from the lending side, I'll have Jen kind of speak to what she's seeing in her world on the lending side, and then definitely pick Mike's brain on actual appraisals, how things are going. You guys know from our team meetings that the last couple of weeks we've been talking about how we can kind of work with our clients to help save the deal. And so we have noticed nationally 1 in 3 deals are falling apart after they go under contract. And one of the reasons can be appraisals. So I thought we'd just kind of dig in with some experts and see how we can help our clients through that process. So, okay, let's get started on that. So I guess, Jen, I'll kind of kick it to you first, this one. How in your world have appraisals been going? What are you seeing in all the closings and the transactions that you're working on right now?
I honestly haven't had any issue on value, I would say, which I think some people have in other markets maybe, or just other arenas. But for us, I actually went back through and looked because I can only pinpoint one. And when I tracked it, yes, I only had one in the last 12 months that came under value.
Okay, good.
And it was only under value $1,500. So sometimes for me, I'm like, why the $1,500? Couldn't we just get there?
Okay, well, maybe Mike's got some insight there. This is going to be fun.
Only $1,500, okay. But And crazy enough, most of ours come in over value, and they have been over value anywhere from 1% to 4%. And for the most part, we're seeing them, I would say more than half of them are overvalued, are probably like 2.5% above value that I'm seeing. So I don't really have any.
Good. No, that's great. Because I feel like people are panicking. Like we are seeing some come through our own walls that are failing because of appraisals, but I don't think it's as many. And most people are experiencing pretty kind of smooth processes in the appraisal in the Des Moines market.
Correct.
Again, you are in the Des Moines market specifically.
Yep. Yeah.
How broad is your region though, just to kind of give people context?
I mean, we lend all over Iowa. Okay. So, I mean, I do a couple loans in Newton, Ottumwa, so different counties for sure. But for the most part, just the ones that are surrounding here in the metro.
So you said specifically haven't really had one recently on value specifically, but then kind of going next to other conditions. Are you seeing other conditions on these appraisals coming
Not
back?
often, and it's going to be the standard, which I think most agents these days are used to looking for, and they know ahead of time, probably to what Mike probably teaches about when he tells them, you know, FHA appraisals, VA, those are always going to be your standards where we have, I don't know that I don't get many FHA back or VA that aren't peeling or chipping paint or a stair railing are pretty common. Deck boards, like a lot of exterior things, especially outbuildings, like those tend to typically have a detached garage or a shed that is behind a tree and no one cares about, so they don't look at it. And it's, so those are a lot of things we tend to see on those appraisals for the most part, I would say.
Good. So Mike, this is what you do consistently. So and good context on all the counties kind of you cover, mostly central Iowa here too. But what are you seeing with appraisals? I mean, both in then value and conditions.
Yeah. So I thought it was interesting when you mentioned that 1 in 3 deals are falling apart nationally. That it seemed really high to me. So I asked just before I came here, I talked to Dan and Chris. So in the last 30 days, Dan has had 2 that came in low. Okay. Chris has had 2, and I've had 1. So that's in the last 30 days of appraisals. You know, we've basically had 5. And I think one of the things that is that we're seeing the market, I think that is struggling the most. Maybe not the toughest thing that we're coming in with. So I would mention 2. So 1 would be new construction. Yeah. And what's interesting with new construction is sometimes what buyers and are doing with as far as upgrades and some of those kind of things, they're not translating back to value, and especially when we have some builders who have the exact same property in another development, and we're they're trying to, they've done a price increase or something like that, and we're not able to get that because it just closed like a month ago, right? And they're saying, well, our price went up, and I'm like, well, it's not really helping. So new construction has been one that we've struggled with. Yeah. The second one has been the under 300,000 market, which is really hot. Okay. Yeah. And typically what we're seeing is that we're still seeing in that market values are it's going above list price. And so the agents are doing a great job of marketing the property, but because
multiple offers still,
that we get multiple offers,
there you go.
And so that has struggled. That market over 300,000, it's almost been very easy to get properties in. And what Jenn mentioned, I have also been coming in higher than list price, and especially in above 300,000, where value doesn't seem to be a problem at all. Okay. So that sort of runs in same thing with what Jenn is seeing on those appraisals. Okay.
And then how about, I mean, you guys are kind of well-versed in different types of loans as well. So are any other conditions that you definitely want our agents to hear? Like, make sure you are watching for these things, educating your sellers, educating your buyers.
Yeah. So I think Jenn mentioned, obviously, with FHA and VA, paint is always an issue. Okay. And I think what some agents don't realize is with VA, it's not just peeling paint and going back to lead base with like 1978. Yeah. VA now is requiring any kind of structure that has peeling paint has to be remedied because they are saying it could affect the structural integrity of whatever we're looking at. So
I get people that ask me like, why peeling paint?
Yeah. Okay. With FHA, it's still 78, right? So anything after built, after 1978, we're not going to probably make a requirement on that. But with VA, that is going to be something. The other thing I think agents tend to forget is crawl space access. Okay. And so any crawl space where there is especially ductwork or plumbing, there has to be access to get to that crawl space. And this is, again, for FHA and VA, would not apply to conventional.
That's conventional, okay.
And if we don't have access has to be created. And so they can either go through the floor, they can go through outside. I had a property on the south side. I would have sworn, and it's sort of that California ranch. Most of those are all on slab. This one happened to be on a crawl space. I couldn't believe it. And so I verified with the agents and with the owner, yes, it is on crawl space. We didn't have access, so they had to go in and make access. So that was one because it was an FHA deal. So we had to require that.
Okay.
So I would say those, paint and crawl space for sure.
Okay.
And then I think the good rule of thumb for your agents is safe, sound, and adequate. Okay. So as long as we don't have any kind of safety issues, if it's adequate for the needs of the house, and if it's structurally sound, then I think you're not going to really have any major issues. Problems.
Okay. Yeah. And to Jen's point too, I want to bring it back to you said any structure with that peeling paint in some of those situations. So when you do have acreages, outbuildings, sheds, detached garages, all of that is going to be looked at.
Yeah. I'm always, when I get an acreage property that comes in VA or FHA, I'm always like just shaking my head because I know there's going to be something there. And it doesn't necessarily have to be painted. It can be removed, but a lot of people do not want to tear down structures. Yeah. So, but yeah, that is, it's very rare that we see an acreage property that doesn't have some kind of and it doesn't even have to have value. I mean, it could be a chicken coop that's worth nothing. And if it has peeling paint, it has to be corrected.
Okay. Good to know. And I like that you specified that it has to do with because of the structural integrity that they think that may be an issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And maybe honestly, just real quick context from either of you, why do banks want appraisals? I mean, maybe we just need to say why appraisals in general to remind people that it's about something bigger than those things, I guess, from either of you.
I mean, obviously from our standpoint, we are taking a risk on the property and we're putting a lien on it. And so we want to make sure that it's worth what it's worth.
Right.
So if they actually didn't pay and we foreclosed on it, that we have something tangible and valuable that we can sell and get our money back, and also for the clients, we want to make sure they're not getting taken advantage of.
Right. I like that answer. It's perfect. Yeah.
Yeah. I would totally agree with Jen. Yeah. I mean, so our client is always the bank and the mortgage company, but our secondary client is the buyer themselves. Yeah. And a lot of times some of these buyers are coming into situations where they don't understand the real estate market.
Totally.
And, we want to make sure that they're not getting something that is going to put them completely underwater.
Exactly.
Especially if they were to get transferred and have to sell it in a year. So we're always keeping that in mind.
Yeah. So I think I wanted to just kind of quickly point that out to remind our realtors that our buyers get to have this. And so it's actually for their benefit at the end of the day. So, and then when negotiating with sellers who maybe things come in a little low, this is, what somebody says an outside third party person is saying the value is, so that it's protecting the bank. And then at the end of the day, that buyer as well. So just kind of good context to remind everybody. So Mike, you specifically said that under 300,000, because it's a hotter market, you're getting those multiple offers that's potentially pushing up the price, the value or the supposed value on that. So when we do get these appraisals that come in low, I guess tell me a little bit about the process and what you see work to kind of maybe get some changes, or is there some wiggle room? Is there some negotiation that the buyer agent, the listing agent can kind of work on with the appraiser? So just talk to me about that a little bit.
I would say, as an appraiser, I would think most appraisers agree when we're coming in low on an appraisal, the appraisal is more scrutinized than any other appraisal that we're doing because of this situation.
Okay.
And I would say a lot of times that appraisers are already stretching to that point to even get it to where it's going to come in low. So Jen mentioned, the 1,500. It probably was closer to 4,000 or 5,000.
Right. And they tried to stretch it.
Exactly. Yeah. And they tried to push it as much as they could
to get it closer,
to be able to see if the two parties could work together.
Yeah.
So it's a process that, first of all, at least Chris and Dan and I, we take very seriously. We know that it's affecting all kinds of people's lives. Okay. And so it's a hard process. So what I would tell you is this: as an agent, if you were to get in a low appraisal, the first thing that I would do is I would go to Jenn. Let's say Jenn is our lender.
Yep.
And the appraisal's coming in low. Jenn has let me know as the agent. I would want to make sure that I at least see if I could get a copy of the appraisal to see the comps that were used. And then what I would do is I would hopefully be able to submit 1 or 2 comps to Jenn and ask for a reconsideration of value.
Okay.
So there has to be a reason, and typically that reason is a comp or 2 that was not used by the appraiser is in that, in that report. And so what Jenn then would do is would contact the appraiser and say, hey, we would like to see if we could get a reconsideration of value and have you take a look at this. Here are a couple comps that the agent suggested that you did not use. Can you at least explain why these weren't used and if they are good comps? And as the appraiser, I'm happy to look at any comp that somebody has. And if there's a comp out there that I missed, let's put it in. I mean, if it makes sense. And so that's why one of my key messages to agents when I'm teaching is if you can have a really good market analysis and you can have a couple comps that you relied on when you marketed that property, and have that in your back pocket. So if this situation arises, you can then submit these comps and say, look, these are 2 really good comps. They're within, whatever, all the parameters that we're looking at on underwriting guidelines, Fannie Mae guidelines.
Yeah,
okay?
It's not your guidelines.
Right. I mean, we have to meet so many different things for underwriters to sign off on our appraisals. And so if you can have that, if you can have maybe 1 or 2 comps that bracket the square footage, 1 or 2 comps that bracket the sale price, all of those kind of things, and then submit that to the lender, have that then go to the appraiser. Now, I've had these where there's been a good comp and we've been able to put it in and we've been able to rescue a deal. I have had comps come and they didn't make any sense at all.
Right.
And so, I would let the lender know, hey, these aren't going to work. At that point, there's really only one other solution, okay? And because the lender already has, so Jenn's got already an approved list of appraisers that New American is using.
Yep.
Okay. And so they're not going to, you can't bring another appraisal in and say, hey, Jenn, use this. Yeah. Especially if it's not one that they're approved on, but actually it goes outside of their system on how they're trying to order these. Yeah. It's supposed to be a random process. And so at that point, the only other solution is to go and start this whole process with another lender. Yeah. There really is not anything
finding something completely new
if
to
the
go
appraiser has already turned Jen down on the reconsideration of value, there is nothing at that point that can be done.
Yeah. We can't just delete it and act like we didn't see it. That's definitely not a thing. Yeah. And then, I mean, to his point, sometimes when it comes back to us, if we don't do the reconsideration of value, then we're either going back to the parties.
There you go.
Negotiating either lower purchase price, meet in the middle. Yes. Or very few and far between, you get the lucky scenario where it's maybe my client's already putting 20% down. We add a little more and it's not, the lower value is not really affecting loan to value, or maybe, they're between 85 and 20%. So we're like, everything's still the same. Yep. Or some clients are
bring
fine
the extra
if
cash,
you can't
putting
negotiate.
a little extra
I mean,
down.
negotiating is always the second step.
Yep.
Worst case scenario would be
buyers figuring that out.
Yes,
on their
because
own
in our world, purchase price versus appraisal, the lower trumps. So some people don't understand that. So if we have a purchase price at $300 and appraisal at $295, our new value is $295. That's what we have to base everything off of for lending, because it's actually worth $295.
Correct. So I'm glad you went there next, because that's exactly where I wanted to go. So we maybe reconsideration of value. We've tried that, short of completely going to a brand new lender for a brand new process, which then completely throws off timeline. So please don't use that as your next step generally. Yes, is to negotiate. So I'm glad you brought that up. So we can go back to the parties, the buyer and the seller. Is there a way to figure this out? Will the seller come down is kind of usually one of the first things. Can we meet in the middle somewhere? Can the buyer make up a little bit of difference and the seller comes down? There's ways to work through this without completely throwing off timelines or necessarily canceling. I mean, sometimes maybe does make the most sense to not do this. But when appraisals happen, we're so far along in the deal generally.
I would say, Angela, that first of all, every low appraisal, when I have contacted agents on, I would say 95% of them knew that there was a chance that it was going to come in low.
Right.
Okay? They're not surprised when I call.
Yeah.
And then going further with that, to Jenn's point, I would say almost 99% of those deals are saved by negotiation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I would then get a new purchase price. So a purchase agreement would come in. Jenn would say, hey, we've changed the price to what the value is.
The sellers brought it down.
Right. Can you amend the appraisal to reflect the new purchase price?
Yeah.
That happens almost all of the time. It's very rare where the entire deal just completely falls apart and the house goes back on the market. That is rare.
Yeah, I would agree. So let's talk about, I wanted to bring up one more point here on the multiple offer situation. So reconsideration of value, Mike, you specifically said, give me bracketed, so like a higher, lower comps, right? Give me good comps. Is there anything to be said? Because I know we've used this strategy sometimes to tell the appraiser, hey, by the way, as a listing agent, this is how many offers we received. This is the range of the offers we received. Just kind of FYI, this is what my buyer was willing to pay in this situation. Does that ever change anything?
So I would say that pre-COVID, that carried a lot of weight. If there was multiple offers and you're like, wow, okay, so they're willing to pay a higher price. We had multiple offers on this deal. And the appraiser could look at that. After COVID and when the market went just berserk,
bananas.
Right. It's almost expected that we as an appraiser think that, there was definitely multiple offers, that it's going, the reason it's going high is because of multiple. I mean, we are completely, we know that that's the case. And so it really doesn't help. I will say this though, when there are no active listings in whatever the neighborhood or the development is. So it's like the only property that this person in that price range is able to purchase. It does allow, and then knowing that we've got multiple offers.
Yes.
It does allow the appraiser to maybe go outside of that area that they were looking at and a little bit more outside of their comfort zone to say, look, we don't have another active listing. So in this price range, this person can't get another house like this.
Yeah.
There's already been multiple offers. If I pull this comp from this neighborhood here, normally I probably wouldn't go to that.
Yeah.
But because of the situation and we have no active listings, I'm going to go and use this comp to bring it in. I still have to have, my other comps in the development.
Yep.
Everything still has to support, but I'm maybe more willing to go outside of that area to bring a comp in when I know that's the situation.
Like a hot commodity area with nothing else out there with multiple. Yeah. Good. Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah. And with one thing I would say with his point is with new construction, one of the things I found, and it's been a while, but maybe because they're not building as much as they were, but neighborhoods that are heavy on ranches versus 2 stories, like that can happen too, where there's no active listings that are 2 stories because one development just everyone's building ranches and there's 1 2-story or whatever it is. I'm sure Mike sees that too.
For sure. And I think sometimes, to Jenn's point, there are certain criteria that are going to drive what the appraisal is focusing in on the most. So it may be style specific, like what Jenn said, like a ranch.
Yeah.
And we have to, we're not going to go and get a bunch of 2 stories just because they are across the street. Yeah. We have to find ranches to be able to compare. It may not be that though. It could be something on a slab, or it could be something with like a like an outbuilding or a pool. There are going to be criteria that are going to drive what is the most important for your search. Yep. And that's the appraiser has to determine that when they get out to see the property. Hey, this is the number one thing. I have to go get comps. I don't care where the area is because
you have to go find the thing.
I have to go find this criteria, whether it be a slab or whatever.
Yeah, very good. All right, very good. I think that gives a really good context. And one, I want everybody to hear too, 5 and 1. And this is what we've seen recently as far as things not appraising at value. So I think that's good context for our agents to, it's okay. Like it's really not the end of the world. For general, appraisals are going pretty well. All right. So the last topic that I wanted to bring up today, just because a lot of our agents have been asking, and this has been the central point of their focus for probably a year and a half now, is just the changes to compensation. So I just would like each of you to just kind of give me a little bit of what you are seeing on purchase agreements with compensation when it's on the lending side, Jenn? And then also, is that affecting appraisals at all on your side, Mike, I guess, is what my agents have been asking. So either one, you want to go first? Go ahead.
I mean, honestly, we haven't really seen any changes, and
okay,
nationwide, maybe other areas, but we have already been an area in a market where it's typical for sellers to pay the buyer's agent. Mm-hmm. So we see it differently on purchase agreements.
Right.
Yes,
right.
like we're looking at it. It's like specifically written there that they agree to pay that.
Yep.
But other than that, we haven't seen anything different at all. Like it's, I think at first, when the changes started, I think everyone was panicking. Like, what is going to happen? This is going to be a nightmare. I don't want my buyers to pay. This is going to be terrible. Yeah. Nothing's going to be at value. We're going to have inflated purchase prices because of this. But I haven't had any issues with anything related to the NAR settlement.
That's good to know. We've been tracking on our end as well, like I said, and we're seeing it all shake out pretty normally, and nothing huge getting rattled or changed as far as.
If anything, I think it makes the sellers and buyers a little more unsettled because it's there and they're seeing it, and then they're worried like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to get my offer because we have to put this verbiage in there. And now what's that mean? Am I paying more because of this? And it's just, create a lot of unnecessary chaos.
And I think really that what I hear there too is good agents are preparing them for those things. So they shouldn't be as nervous. I mean, of course they get to be nervous and of course they get to ask questions, but we get to be the advisors to them and help educate them through that process and make it so it's not so scary. And just, this is the way we're going to do it. And it is coming from the seller. Like you're saying, everything's been coming from the seller. Okay, good. What are you seeing, Mike? What are you hearing, seeing, I guess I would say too?
So I would say, first of all, the agreements that we have come into our office, the seller is paying the commissions on everyone that we have not seen one that has come in where the seller
or things split or
right,
anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
The agents that I've talked to across the board since this got into effect, not one of them has told me that they have a seller who is not going to pay the buyer's commission.
Okay.
As far as the value is concerned, and I was contacted by a couple different. So the Iowa Association of Realtors did a panel. Mm-hmm. I happened to be on that panel before the changes went into effect, and they had all kinds of different people in the industry. They had lenders and they had people from the state because obviously these were going to be changes that were going to
affect everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And my thought was early on that I don't think we're going to see much as far as on the appraisal side, and that has worked out. So one of the things that as appraisers before this change took effect, we never looked at compensation on what the deal was. Anyway, first of all, we didn't get the compensation.
Yeah.
We could see on the MLS that maybe there was
what was
3%.
Offered on that. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
We never got that, and we never took it into play. When we would do for sale by owners, again, there was no difference between that and a property that was listed. We weren't making adjustments because one didn't have agents and getting people compensation.
Good.
And so I didn't think that there was going to be any change. Now, I did say, look, the caveat here is that if we start to see this big shift where sellers are not paying buyers commissions, and then when a property does come in with a commission and the market is not recognizing that, maybe we're going to have to start making adjustments for that.
Okay.
But we haven't seen that at all.
So far.
It's been like business as usual. And so there has been no effect on values at all with commissions.
Okay. That's really good insight. I really, really appreciate that from both of you. And I think our people needed to hear that. So thank you really, truly for both of you being here, being willing to come and sit and chat with me and educate our people always in general, because you both do a lot of that out in the world. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. For more episodes, resources, and show notes, head to morethanmorepodcast.com.